So let's talk about the vendor side, because it really sounds like someone could essentially set up a route based off of services with you.
So we when we created the vendor side, and there's two completely totally separate. They are obviously merged together internally, but two totally separate portals. One for the customer, one for the vendor. When we built the vendor portal, we had a few things in mind. First and foremost, we know that small business doesn't have generally a lot of money for marketing budgets and those kind of things. So we kind of saw them going the traditional route of Facebook recommendations, that kind of thing.
Right, really chasing the like social media, like, hey, does anybody know a good blah blah blah?
Which we kind of monitored that a little bit and kind of saw the race to the bottom of, if your top guy was $100, your next guy was $95, the guy after that was $90. So
Becomes that reverse eBay or
sure, yeah.
like you said, the race to the bottom.
Yeah,
I like that.
bidding on the service in reverse, and really what we saw happen was somebody would be on there looking for those recommendations. The majority of the time, they would take the guy who was willing to race the furthest to the bottom. They would hire them for the service, and we would see that same individual, back on Facebook looking for recommendations for the identical service a couple of weeks later. Because that vendor didn't show up, they closed their doors. It's just not a viable model. We also kind of saw vendors going the route of Angie's List and Thumbtack, where a lot of times they were paying absorbent amounts of money for lead generation, that they were selling the same leads to multiple businesses at 90, $100 with a close rate of maybe 15% at best. And again, if I'm a small business, I've got 2, 3, 4 man crew spending $90 with a 15% close rate. That's not viable for me. That is using up 100% of my profit. And then there's still no efficiency in the route. So when we set up the software and how jobs, never ever do we send a lead to anybody. They get actual jobs that a customer has actually ordered.
That's booked.
It is booked 100%. And if they accept it, which they have the ability in the system to accept or reject a job, they see all of the details in advance. They say, hey, okay, here's where this job is at. Here's what it pays. Here's what it is. They click accept. Whatever date and time that job was booked for, they're now obligated to provide that service to that customer. If it's a reoccurring service, if it's a pool clean that's weekly or a house clean that's biweekly, that same service provider will be your service provider until you request another one or until you discontinue service. But that service provider always remains the same. You don't get somebody different every week. You don't get somebody different every 2 weeks. So again, once you kind of create that relationship with your local small business that we're utilizing and ultimately helping, that trust continues throughout your service. And then we also have a small business incubation program that we implemented because there's a severe lack of individuals,
Sure.
certainly that want to provide services and actually get out and work for a living. So we're helping young 20-somethings that want to get into business. They're good at their craft. They're not exactly sure how to go about becoming self-employed. Because we built the system with all of the tooling to manage schedule, manage finances, customer communication. We help them do that. We help them, through connections like you, get the proper insurance, set up the LLC, make sure that they have, EIN numbers, that they're reporting their income correctly.
Everything's legit.
Everything is legit.